Well, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Glad to have everybody here for our July Economic Development Authority meeting. The year is just moving by fast, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
So think all of, and where are we at on days?
I have 45 days before I complete my second year. Today is my 320th day of my second year.
I'm just amazed at how you keep track
Oh,
of
I gotta
it.
keep track. Thank you.
It's not going to be long before everybody in the city is going to be doing that. I'm on day such and such of it. So
Right.
thank you for being here this
Thank
morning.
you.
Thank everyone. And just quickly, before we jump into roll call, I just want to make sure, as Councilwoman Simmons just pointed out, we have a tilt-up event that many of you are going to, so we will be doing our best to be expeditious with the meeting this morning, not to handle the business that needs to be done lightly, but as much as we can, please everybody keep that in mind, that we do want to get everyone out here in plenty of time and safely, and with High Street being disrupted and police blocking roads and all. So we're going to move as expeditiously as we can. So with that, Mr. Moore, would you take us through the roll call?
Yes, sir. Good morning. Mr. Hines.
Present.
Ms. Jiggets.
Present.
Mr. Kelly. Ms. Revel.
Present.
Mr. Scott.
Present.
Mr. Thomason.
Present.
And Mr. Thompson. We have a quorum.
All right, fantastic. All right, moving right into it, we have our minutes. Everybody received your packages.
Move adoption of the minutes.
Second.
Any comments, questions, concerns, corrections? All right.
All right.
Go into roll call on that, please.
Mr. Hines.
Yes.
Ms. Jiggets.
Yes.
Ms. Revel.
Yes.
Mr. Scott.
Yes.
Mr. Thomason.
Yes.
We have a quorum. Passes.
Passes, yes. That's all right. All right. Well, Ms. Kelly, I know that you're going to step in and take us through the financials this morning.
Sure.
Is Ms. Blackford joining us at all, or she?
Yes, she will be joining us, but she's just a
Yes.
little bit late today.
Thank you so much for doing that for us. So.
No problem. This is the June 30th unaudited statements for the fiscal year. June 30th is the end of the fiscal year, so these are the statements that will get audited, and so I'm going to run through them. We have a net position of $13,698,280.92. Our net income for the month of June, or the year ending of June, is $8,135.27, and it's actually a change. It's in a deficit. There's also, for the economic development, the Schedule A, our monthly expenses for our development properties was $7626.04. The year-to-date was $335,855. Cumulative through the year is $1,352,000, and our total investments for our development properties was $10,870,974. Schedule B does the monthly expenses for all those developments. Schedule C is a breakdown of the grants that we have awarded to different businesses. The year-to-date amount paid is $88,006.44. We have remaining to be paid of those grants of $69,463.87. And then the last page of pooled cash is broken down, the pooled cash amount, and on the side, Lisa did a detailed explanation of what the pooled cash is. Mr. Kelly, our treasurer, who is unfortunately not here today, had asked some questions, and what I'd like to do is go through those questions that might provide a little bit more clarity. He asked about, on page 1 or Schedule 1, pledged taxes, and he asked if those were held in an escrow. And what these are the breeding property, and the city will be sending a check to EDA for fiscal year end, so the funds can be placed in the BB&T escrow account per contract. We had to wait till this month to figure out how much those taxes would be. He also asked about accounts payable on this page, that we had 0. Accounts payable goes up and down depending on when the timing of checks are. There's none for June because we had paid all our expenses, and we didn't have anything outstanding to pay, hence the 0 balance. On the second page, he asked about stormwater fees, why aren't there any stormwater fees, and those are paid on a quarterly basis, so therefore not every quarter you get them. He also asked about the insurance, and the insurance is paid annually. That's why there's no expense in June. And then he asked about the industrial bond revenue fees. Right now, the city has 2 active industrial bonds that we receive fees from, so our revenue has gone down for those, and that's why the decline. He had asked to have our financial statements do a comparison between May and June, and also budget year-to-date, actual budget, the year-to-date budget, and May and June. And I think it really gives you a good comparison, and I hope it's a couple more columns. I think sometimes it really brings out some things that you can ask questions on, and you can see the comparison between the 2 months or the year-to-date. Are there any questions?
I just have a comment. Actually, as the commissioners make recommendations, let's make sure that we permanently include them, because when I first came on the authority, I had made the recommendation that we have to show comparative data
Okay.
and with the year-to-date and the budget. So let's just make sure as we have a transition in staff, we don't lose the recommendations that commissioners make for whatever the venue is.
These are not the traditional way to show financial statements, and we could definitely have it as a working copy. And when we give it to the commissioners, when we do an audited financial statement, they will not show the same way. They will
No,
show the
that's
traditional way.
understood, but for
this is a
our-
good working copy, and
Yes.
I do appreciate showing the comparison. Makes it a little bit easier to see issues. And
Yes.
Ms. Kelly, I have 2 questions for you. Since you're on that subject, is there a traditional format that they should be, especially are all the other boards receiving them in a certain format?
If it's a working document, you can have it whatever format you want. Budget to actual, typically in an audit, you don't show budget to actual in the financial statements, you show it in a footnote. And so there's definitely a way you show it based on GASB and the accounting standards. But for a monthly report, you can have it whatever way you'd like to see it.
So the city doesn't establish a standard for that for the boards and
I think
commissions?
each board can have its own,
Okay. And then, my
as long as it's shown, reasonable that
Right.
assets and then liabilities, that type of thing.
Right, and for FASB, I call it FASB, Financial Accounting Standard Board, for the auditing purposes, the annual audit, it's going to be comparison from the benchmark of the last year to last fiscal year to the current fiscal year, and that's what you would get in your report.
And FASB is for corporate and GASB is for government. So we actually follow GASB.
Okay.
And so they're very similar, but
Right.
government is the GASB.
Anyway, my other question, you made a comment about the industrial bond revenue fees, the revenue from that going down?
Right.
What was the factor on that?
Last year we had 3 bonds outstanding, and this year we only have 2 bonds
So
outstanding.
one has expired then? It's been
One
fulfilled?
has
or
been
whatever?
defeased, yes.
Okay, all right, thank you.
And I'm sorry, Mr. Hines had a question last month about a signage, and Lisa had sent me the email, and I forgot to read that, I'm sorry. The signage that Mr. Hines asked about last meeting, invoice was for $1880. And it was to put a road closed sign to keep trespassers off property at Victory Village. That was what the,
Okay.
I'm sorry, I didn't.
Thank you. And that
Add
wasn't
that to my
and that
comments.
wasn't a single sign, it was actually a few,
A few
correct?
signs, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Any other
First I'd heard
questions?
of it, that's all.
Thank you. Chair would entertain a motion.
Move adoption.
Second.
All right. Mr. Moore.
Mr. Hines,
Yes.
Ms. Jiggets, Ms. Revel,
Yes.
Mr. Scott,
Yes.
and Mr. Thomason.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, fantastic. All right, now we move into our old business with the Victory Village.
Sure, but Miss Kelly just stole my
I'm
thunder.
so sorry, I didn't read the agenda.
So that,
Lisa
unless you
was
have
giving
more
me all these
questions.
notes to make sure I said it. I'm
That's called
sorry.
efficiency, is what that's called.
I said we were going to be expeditious, so. Mr. Jones.
No problem, no problem.
All right. Well, of course, we just talked about that as well, too, so we're being expeditious. Our next item there is the tilt-up ceremony, which is this morning at 10 o'clock, which we are going to move to get everyone out of here. So we can jump right into the DeVars Quarterly Update. We have our guests here from DeVars. Mr. Moore, would you like to introduce them and get them started?
Yes, very quickly. Excuse me. This morning we have David Bickford and Levi Thompson from DeVars, and they will give us an update on the properties that they currently represent for the EDA.
All right, good morning, guys. Thanks for having us today. Last time we met, we had it was about 3 deals. That was not during our quarterly update. That was just a presentation of a couple of items that that you guys have for review. We'll start off, and instead of saying all of our marketing and how many people it's hit and signs and things like that, we're just going to go into the highlights, keep it kind of simple. That way you guys can get out to your tilt up event. Number 1, which is 710 Lincoln. We've got the group Feather and Fin, owner Tim Roberts. We're just getting the
development agreement on that.
Yeah.
So that's, I think everybody's aware of that.
Choose today.
Yeah.
So, and that is
They know what it
number
is.
1. So 3336 Victory Portsmouth Boulevard. So we have the development agreement signed with the national franchisee. They've met with the franchisor, the developer has met with the corporate office to develop the site here, and we're in the final stages of due diligence. Due diligence ends September 30th. So that's where the status of 3336 Victory Boulevard. That's the corner of Greenwood and Victory, where where the former BK site is, and where the current BK site will be. So 3335 Victory is that's the 4 acres right across the street from there. We have a lot of interest from a local business owner, but we're currently working with the city and staff just to kind of vet their use and what they want to do out at the property. So that's 3335 Victory. 3125 Victory is the perennial stream. That's that 1.71 acres that's located right next to the industrial complex on Victory. We're still waiting for a wetlands delineation to determine what is to be sold or what is to be usable. What's usable out there that the neighbor would ultimately take. And you'll see that theme come up again on 409 McLean. 409 McLean's that just kind of jumping around a little bit, but that's that 32 acres. That's right next to TCC. That we kind of need to figure out what is available for sale. That's the main question that we're getting there. But keeping in context, there's 3215. That's the former library. We also have a deal out there with the AA.
The development agreement's finalized with the buyer. So they're aware of that.
Yeah, so that's one of the 3 that is
I think you gotta scroll down.
under contract. Excuse me. So 409 McLean Street. This is what I just touched on a second ago. So roughly there's 32 acres out there. We have strong interest from a group, a local developer who wants to put some residential houses out there. But he's not certain, and we're not certain how much land is out there, how much can be sold, how much he can develop. So it would be our recommendation that we figure out, we have an old wetlands delineation, but it's from 2003, 2004, somewhere around there. So wetland delineations only last a certain amount of time, and water and land changes over time. So at this point, we would recommend to the board that we figure out if we get another wetlands delineation done. That way, you guys would know what it is you are selling and what you could better market it for.
And the current prospect has requested that we ask the
We can't
seller.
hear you.
Sorry. The current prospect that we have for the site has requested that we ask the seller to consider updating the wetlands delineation survey so that we can determine exactly what's available.
What does that cost?
Thank you.
Not really sure. We'll have to look into that.
When was it last
Was
done?
it
It was last done in 2003, I believe.
Also.
Yeah.
It's about 14 years old.
So and they only last for about 5 years, I think.
They're
So
good for about 5 years.
yeah, so it's definitely time to update.
Is
at
that
some point.
federal regulatory requirement or state regulatory requirements, the 5 years for the standard wetlands?
I'm not sure who sets the standard on how long they're good for.
Because we need to know
Well, the
that, we need to
wetlands,
find that out.
the wetlands oversight is through the
Army Corps of Engineers.
U.S.
Corps of Engineers.
So we need to know what the,
That could easily be determined.
Is anybody here from planning?
No.
What would be the expectation? Would you expect that we would increase the amount of land that we would have, or would it be decreased, or is there any way of knowing?
I don't know there's any really way of knowing. You know,
Standards change a lot over time, too.
Right.
I mean, the distances that Chesapeake Bay Foundation wants you to be from a wetlands might have fluctuated since we last did the study, so.
I'm not sure if we would know if it's going up or down. Usually they don't go down, from what I understand, but
So who would be able to give us an estimate on the cost of that?
we will have to do a little research and get back to you. with that.
Mr. Chairman,
There's a
let me suggest to you that you touch base with Bob Baldwin and James Wright
We'll have that information.
from planning and engineering, that they might have some insight. They would definitely know the route to take, so you won't have to beat your head in touch with them.
We'll look into that and report back to you.
Well, somebody from...
Actually, back to staff, and we would look for an update at the
They'll
next
take
meeting,
care
so
of
we
it.
know whether or not to make a move on that, a motion, or...
Right, we will provide an update, and the city engineer definitely has the information on getting our wetlands delineation. Right.
Yeah.
Good, great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. So, strong interest for 409 McLean, but we just need to know what it is we have there.
What kind of density was he looking at there? Is it single family, or...?
So, single-family residences, I mean, something 4 or 5 an acre, 4 or 5 residences an acre, I think he was planning on doing. Probably looking at, I mean, using the old wetlands delineation, I've taken it to a few, we've taken it to a few groups, and about 40 to 45 units we think you could put out there, given the 16.72 acres that are there. That's kind of how people have analyzed it so far. So, and we're still trying to keep that vinyl siding away as best we can. I don't know if that's a realistic possibility, but we're doing our best to make sure that's out there, and that developers know that that's not what's wanted for the development standards. So that brings us to 700 Crawford. We've got a local developer who's looking at it to do a multifamily project. He wants to do a 4-story multifamily. He's running his numbers. He's putting his performer together right now, and we think we could have a deal here pretty soon. So,
For an offer.
yeah. 219 Pavilion, and hate to end on a bad note, but that's the only one at this time that we currently don't have any prospects for. That's the 3.95 acre site that's right behind us here. I believe we've taken it out to a few industrial
Yes.
groups, and
Yes.
they've analyzed it, but it's about as far as we've gotten on that one. It's a very difficult site to traffic and to get people to. We should try to keep coming with
Where is that again?
219 Pavilion.
That's the old Holiday Inn Express?
Yes, adjacent to
Oh,
Massive.
Did we go back?
Yes,
Sorry, that's-
yes.
Pavilion Drive didn't register.
Mr. Chairman.
Right next to the coffee place.
Yeah, if there's any questions, we didn't want to hold you guys up today. I know there's a time frame on our report, so.
Yes, Mr. Hines.
Quick question about the 219 Pavilion. Were there any comments that were provided by the people who have looked at it that would make this possibly more an attractive site for those types of?
So, a couple of the ideas is the train track that goes right through there. It's a closed-down train track, but that could be a better access point rather than to force people to slow down off of the off-ramp.
Yeah.
That maybe you could make a turn, and that it's still a little tough to get cars to. I mean, to really have it make sense from a traffic standpoint.
Yeah.
But that was one idea that we worked with.
I'm talking about the people who actually came out and looked at it, possible potential developers. Did they provide any sort of comments or anything of that nature that might be useful
Why'd they
for
say
an
no?
infrastructure?
Why'd they say no?
I could just let me touch that.
Yeah.
From what staff has shown, we do have a conceptual plan with an 80,000 square foot warehouse building, but access to the site and egress is a problem. It is tight. And then again, if from a trucking standpoint or from an access, depending on what type of use is there, it's a tight turning radius in there. So it's a great site, great location, but if you can't get to it or if there's difficulty getting to it, that can hinder the type of use that can go there. And so that's where we are. If you understand where the site is, when you come off of the interstate right now, you have to jump. Even if you came off just to
Crawford exit?
yes, when you come off, you have to come over. I believe it's
2 or 3 lanes.
three, maybe even 4 lanes to get over. Then still make a turn. From a truck standpoint, that is a number of lanes to cross. And then again, once you access the site, to get around in that site, depending on the size of building, that's going to be that could be tight. So that's what we've heard so far. Is there potential there? Certainly, but it's going to be finding the right user and end user at this point on the site.
So the limited service hotel is not popular?
That's
I mean, you can certainly get a car can certainly turn right and turn
Certainly,
in
yes.
certainly.
We were, I think we've taken it to a number of hotel developers, and their immediate first question was, where's our we need a RevPAR study to understand how much we can build per key being per hotel room. And that was their first question. I mean, right off the bat. So we'd hope to get a study done. We're going to try to use that downtown study to see if that could provide them enough information in that manner. But our direction was first to wait for that downtown study to be done and then look to see if we could do a RevPAR study.
Dr. Patton?
So,
The issues that have been raised regarding that site have been long-standing issues, both egress and ingress, state highway, dealing with the state and how we would, whatever we would want to do to change the configurations of getting off and to the site, and the train track. The hotel, when we had interest years ago, they wanted the city to remove the tracks. Well, the tracks aren't owned by the city, and we would have to go through whomever the tracks belong to and then get permission. And so it has been the complications of making the site ready for some developer. And that's pretty much what developers are looking for. You want to develop, but you got to have
Absolutely
a
right.
site-ready site to go.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
That was the reason I was asking that question, was what type of infrastructure, what type of things we would need to get that site ready for some sort of development. So that's why I was asking that question. So I think we need to continue to keep our ear to the ground on what the development community is saying they want with that site. Sure. And then maybe bring it back to us so we can kind of discuss that and see what we can do
To get
as a city and as an EDA to make that happen.
Mr. Scott?
I was just going to say, I think that goes back to what we had originally discussed a while ago about identifying all of our sites, all of our inventory, and grading that inventory to see where it is, to see what needs to be done, what to make it viable to be placed in the rotation. If it's not ready, and it sounds like what they said was bad news, nothing's been done on it, it's not ready, so we need to identify what the barriers are to get that graded. So is that a grade 1, which means ready to go, or is that a grade 5, which means it needs a lot of work? And we put that in a priority and put that in a budget and work with the city to see what needs to be done. If it's not ready, why are we asking these folks to sell something that they know won't sell? It shouldn't even be on the market listed at this point if we know and the professionals are telling us it's not ready.
Well, I don't know, it's not time to think about what else could we do with it as we're continuing to attract and have multifamily developments. Should this be some type of a public area that we can draw our new residents to, that they can enjoy our city?
Maybe another use, is that what you're saying?
Turn it over to Parks and Rec and turn it into something that's really nice and useful, and people are seeing that as they're coming in and out of the tunnel, and they see something that has activities and families and things
Well, it has been
involved.
used for
And
soccer.
what's that?
I said it has been used for soccer by the shipyard.
Yeah, so I mean-
Lunchtime, people coming down to play on the grounds.
So, anyway, great point. Any other questions for our DeVars team or comments?
I must weigh in on Commissioner Scott's comments, and I guess I see it in a different light. Certainly, we know that certain sites are more marketable than other sites, but we have to keep all the sites on the forefront, because many times what we might grade as a 5, the right prospect will see it as their opportunity. So let's not be too quick to try to, based on a grading system, decide what we want DeVaris to market for us. I stand from the experience of economic development. All sites are marketable, and we have to embrace all sites and continue to look for prospects for all the sites. That's my opinion.
We've always operated on a manner that all options are on the table in terms of these lands. So yeah, I mean, any prospect we get, we vet them and bring them to staff and see what the next step is. So we're with you there.
Again, trying to keep us expeditious, but I would love to hear from our liaisons in regards to overarching larger plans for the city in these properties. And this is not necessarily a deep discussion to get into, but it's not just what we can sell them and who we can get there in, but are we all aligned? We have PRHA here today. Thank you for joining us. And are we all aligned as a city, as a team, moving forward with key goals? And we should have, 3 to 5 key goals that every department in the city is moving towards, and that we're supporting each other and making those happen, even in our properties. So as we start having those discussions like that, I think we need to make sure our liaisons are telling us and giving us a direction that is in alignment with the others to make that happen.
And I don't think we have that list right now. It's the fact of the matter. Other than the very, very broad, at the broadest level. I mean, I agree with Mr. Scott. They've all got to be on the table. They're all owned. They're all available. There's, as Ms. Jiggett said, what's A to one guy is D to somebody else. But know that, we've got some challenges with some of these sites, and if we need to do a wetland study or look at removing a train track or those things, we at least need to know what they are and what the costs are. Is there a benefit to doing that we can see in the future? As far as EDA, PPIC, PRHA, and the City Council having those 4 or 5, rules of engagement, I wish we did have them, and we should.
And that's what we were asking at the joint meeting.
Yeah.
When we talk about expanding the LIPS program, so we don't have a grasp of that. So, Vice Mayor, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, that's why we brought the joint meetings back, so we can get on the same sheet of music. And as I suggested in those meetings, having PRHA here, and I asked the question with somebody from planning here, because all we only run into problems when A don't know what B is doing. And if somebody from planning, Mr. Wright, they probably could answer your question about the wetlands, and we wouldn't be worried about it anymore. But as far as the properties, you never know what somebody's looking for and how they're going to use it. So no property is off the table.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And because somebody may come in and want to do something bad enough that whatever it takes, they'll pay for it. They'll do it. So let's not limit ourselves until somebody comes and say, if a developer wants something, they're not shy about asking. So if they come in and say, I want this piece of property, but I need this done, they'll tell us. But in the meantime, we keep all options open. We let people know that Portsmouth is open for business. You can come here. If you got something you want to do, let us know what it takes to do it, and we'll try to accommodate and move on. But keeping in touch with each other. For you guys, I just think you the briefing today was fine. I know it was brief. I knew where all those properties was, but I bet you some people sitting behind me didn't know where 90% of what you were talking about, where it is. We know.
Well, shoot, I didn't know what 219 Pavilion was.
There you go.
But I know exactly what it is once you told me.
I knew where it was, but we've traversed the city for years, so we just need to know. We just need to be a little more crystal, because there's a guy who used to film these things and puts them out there for the public. So.
Well, that's already.
So we can email this to you guys if that'll kind of help identify where everything is.
Yeah, but they're not going to know what he was talking about. They're going to go get a map to figure out. The people who are going to watch this, I'm going to get a map to figure out half those And even our senior councilwoman didn't know where one of them was, so I doubt that the general public's going to know.
Well, Vice Mayor, just as we're making transitions, Mr. Jones, we had discussed at several other meetings to make sure that any time that we talked about a property, that we had a singular map for that property in the PowerPoints for that exact reason. So it's just something, actually staff was doing a good job with that, but as we're doing some transitions, I'm sure we'll get back to that. That it'll be.
If I could, Chair, right, we will make sure that when we present this to you again, that we have the singular map. Today, we just, for the sake of brevity, went with this overall map, but we will get back to making sure there's a singular map.
Not a criticism, just observation.
Sure.
But we're open for business. So whether the property is marking them all as hard as you can, and if something needs to be done to make them ready, let the council decide whether it's feasible or to do that. So do your part of it. Let Ms. Simmons and I take the other part back to our colleagues. If it costs money to make it happen, let's make that decision. But don't limit yourself because of what someone might want to be done.
Dr. Patton, you had something else?
I was just thinking back. DeVaris just made a major report to us with maps of all properties. So everybody around this table has that in hand, and it was on the visual that the public could access. But we could go back and make copies of what's in DeVaris and just put them back in.
I don't think we need to do that. We just need just whenever we do something in the future, because different people watch from different times. I mean, when the signs go up in their neighborhood, they're watching.
We didn't come with our normal maps today. We were trying to be a little quicker. We
I got
understand
you.
y'all have limited time, so we were trying to get on one slide, get in, get out. Sorry. We'll be sure we have that ready for you next time.
Mr. Hines.
I'll be very brief in my comment. I do want to thank y'all for actually making some progress on some of these very challenging parcels that we've had. So I do want to at least give you an attaboy in that. There's a couple prospective sales that are going through right now and spots that have no activity at all for a number of years. So I just wanted to thank you for that.
We hope to
And for the progress that's taking place.
Go around. There should be a lot less to talk about.
Yeah.
Well, Mr. Thompson, Mr. Bickford, we appreciate y'all doing that. We do appreciate the updates. I think they've made a difference. That certainly has been a change, and we're glad to have that as part of that. And yes, Ms.
I
Jiggins.
do have a question, because if you recall, 3 meetings ago, maybe 4 meetings ago, I requested the wetlands study on the first property you mentioned, and I need to know where's the status. Is that within development? They needed to move out on that. It was the very first property over near Victory.
312, 3215.
I think it was
3125.
1.5. Yeah,
number 4.
yeah. And I had made a suggestion. So what happened to that? Is it within the development department to move out on that? What was the procedure once?
I don't know if
It
we
was
can answer
requested.
it to an internal.
Well, I understood, Robert, that the development board is having a study done, or some of the planning department's going to go get the new wetland.
One where it's not
study.
that much acreage.
Right, that was-
Wanted to
yes.
find out how much was wetlands.
It's a 1.7 acre parcel. We think there's about a 1/4 acre developable or buildable.
Yeah, but
But they did mention, they said they're waiting for it to come back.
We thought it was.
no,
we were
but
waiting to
who's
hear.
waiting for it to come back? You all, development, who has moved out on the wetland study? Because I certainly recommended that. That was 3 or 4 meetings ago, and the consensus was to get it done. So,
Mr. Jones.
Thank you, Chair Thompson. So we as staff for EDA, we will work with the city engineer to get the wetland study done. I will check to see the status of it.
Please.
I know that we have done it. So for Burgess Point Road, we have done a delineation study for that as well, with the city engineer leading that process. So we will do the same for the others. I will just check the status and report back to you all.
right, because that's a small acreage.
Right.
And we were trying to get that information quickly, because there was interest in it, but we needed to know what the wetlands part was.
Sure. Right. We'll have that for you.
Okay.
And that's owner responsibility, not our.
I didn't know who was moving out on
Right.
it. That's why I
just-
raised the issue.
It's the owner's responsibility, so. At any rate, Mr. Thompson and Mr. Bickford, was there anything else that you wanted to add today? I mean,
That's it. Thank you guys for having us.
we do appreciate you. Thank you very much.
Thank you for being here.
Great job.
All right, well, let's move right on along, and Mr. Jones? All right, let's go into the ground maintenance.
Thank you, Chair Thomason. I just wanted to give the commissioners an update on our grounds maintenance contract. I know we had talked about this over the past few months. We went through a purchasing process. The purchasing procurement officer bid the project. We only had one person respond, and so we will be executing a contract with the JABS Services. They are the current contractor that we have used to take care of EDA properties.
Only one bidder responded to a grounds contract?
One bidder. We also have Mike Ammons, our procurement officer here, if you have some specific questions about the.
I'm very familiar with his work. He does a great job.
Okay.
But it's just question, it's.
Right, it's several properties, and they're smaller properties, and they're dispersed through the city, and that does make it difficult for grounds maintenance company to be interested in that.
And the retail market is doing very well right now, so to move to doing a small contract for government as opposed to what you can do in retail, there's just not a lot of attractiveness to doing it. It really isn't. From a contractor standpoint of view, trust me, it's. Yeah.
Only one bidder responded, and makes it a pretty easy award, doesn't it? Thank you.
All right.
All righty. All right, and we'll continue to move along. So on to Lincoln Street, Mr. Miller.
Sure.
More
I don't know,
together,
Robert, if you
whatever.
I think we'll kind of tag team this one, but
Alrighty, I'll step
essentially, thank you, Chairman. Essentially, what we have done is submitted to the EDA the two contracts, one for 710 Lincoln Street, the other one for 3215 Academy Avenue. We did previously send that out to the members of the authority to receive any comments or questions regarding those agreements, those development agreements. We did not, to my knowledge, receive any questions, but we are certainly here today, this morning, to answer any questions. The agreements were pretty straightforward. Our standard feasibility time on a project is feasibility of 90 days, a permitting period of 180 days or 6 months, and then we allow them a time to get from closing to CO. So on each particular project, for 710 Lincoln Street, for example, instead of the 180 days for the permitting period, they actually asked for an additional 30 days because of the ABEX Superfund site, and that the site that they are looking at, 710 Lincoln, because it is a former Superfund site, they needed additional permitting period. From the standpoint of getting from closing to CO, they are looking at 18 months. Again, mainly because of the Superfund site and the requirements that are necessary through the government to have that cleared. That's 710 Lincoln. 3215 Academy Avenue.
Just
I'm sorry.
real quick before you jump to that one,
Yes,
I
sir.
just want to ask you a question for clarity. As I understand and as I read, it seemed to me that you were able to execute and achieve everything that we had previously said that we wanted to have in these. Is that
Yes, sir.
correct with this
Yes, sir.
particular? Let's stay on this one for right now.
Yes, sir. Looking at 710, everything that the commissioners asked about or we discussed previously in closed session has been vetted and cleared with the prospect purchaser, and they have agreed to you all's terms. Again, the only request that they had was, again, the 30-day additional period for permitting, again, because of the Superfund, and then the 18 months from close to CO for the construction of the building.
So at this time, is there a motion?
Motion to approve resolution.
Do we have a second?
A second.
All righty. Take us up for the vote there, Mr. Moore.
Yes, sir. Mr. Hines?
Yes.
Ms. Jiggets?
Yes.
Ms. Revel?
Yes.
Mr. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Thomason?
Yes.
All right, motion carries.
And if I may inject one more time, the same would hold true with Academy Avenue?
Yes, sir.
That you were able to accomplish all the objectives that we had directed?
Yes, sir.
To be done?
Yes,
So
sir.
is there any variance on that you'd?
No, sir, the only variance was instead of 18 months to CO, they needed 12 months to CO. Again, being that it is an existing building and they are rehabbing that building, they are ready to move forward on that project. So that is the only change or difference.
Okay.
And just, we're assuming everybody knows that CO is certificate of occupancy.
Certificate of occupancy, I apologize.
That's okay.
Okay, was there any discussion or a
My
motion?
only
for-
quick question before you get to the motion is, I'm looking at the resolution, I apologize for not sending a question, but it just occurred to me. When we talked about making sure that they invested $350 in the site.
Yes, sir.
Is that going to be who's monitoring that? Because I didn't, I'm assuming that, we're giving you the authority to do that in the document, so I'm assuming that that's going to be.
And Jeff, I'll let you speak to that.
Yeah, that's secured in a few ways. They're going to be required to provide receipts, invoices, other things to document spending at least $350 on the rehab, which is necessary because the purchase price reflects that they're going to put that money in there. In addition, if they don't spend that, then we'll have a repurchase right triggered, as well as a $35,000 letter of credit, 10% of the amount in our favor, which we can draw if they do not spend it.
All right. Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
I just have one comment. We brought up where the proceeds were going to go for this at one point, and I believe council approved the transfer of this, and they're setting up an economic development fund. Am I correct in saying that, like a special fund? Am I understanding that, Dr. Patton? Correct? That there's a special account being set up for this?
Or this
The
particular,
proceeds of the sale.
I might be able to.
Yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah.
no, I'm not aware.
The CMR, city manager report that went to council on this item and the draft cooperation agreement that was attached to the council resolution both contemplated that in the next few months there would be a concept of an economic development incentive fund to be created going forward. And so that has not been done yet. The draft cooperation agreement provides that if that is adopted and created, then the funds, the net proceeds will go into that. If not, they will be as determined by the parties later on.
Okay.
Yeah, in discussion, we don't have a fund set up at this time.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure everybody had an
We talked
understanding.
about it, but we
where-
haven't done it yet.
That's right.
Right.
So in lieu of that, then, does that mean that technically, and I hate to use the word, the funds are encumbered until that decision is made? The funds are actually held by the EDA, but they're somewhat encumbered.
I think that's fair to say. Also, I mean, this won't go to closing for 6 months to a year at the earliest, so there may be something in place by the time we actually close and have the.
But if not, that would be the case.
Right, it'd be held on our books, encumbered, where we could not spend it until such a time a decision's made by council or city
Actually,
manager.
yeah,
Mr. Vice Mayor?
Council didn't weigh in on that yet, so.
Okay, I mean.
So I wouldn't say where those funds are going right now. Two Tuesdays from now, we may decide to do something else. Until then, you could consider that city council money until we decide where it's going.
We don't know.
Thank you. So was there a motion for this?
Move adoption of the resolution.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Revel.
All right, Mr. Hines.
Yes.
Ms. Jiggets.
Yes.
Ms. Revel.
Yes.
Mr. Scott.
Yes.
Mr. Thomason.
Yes.
All right, motion carries.
All right, fantastic. Thank you, everyone. So, Ms. Jiggets to do this. So the only item that will be discussed will be the comments at portion center, right?
Come out of.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Need the one to go into.
Okay, yes. And so only for the comments when you're reading it. That's the only thing that will be discussed. Yeah, we had the others in case they needed to, in case something else was changing on that, but she's got both of them, yes. So at this time, I have a motion being proposed by Ms. Jiggets.
Okay, resolution of intent to meet in closed meeting. Whereas the Board of Commissioners of the EDA desires to enter into a closed meeting, and whereas in compliance with the requirements of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act, the topics to be discussed are set forth below, and the subparagraphs of paragraph 2.2-3711A of the Virginia Code authorizing discussion of the topics in closed session are set forth in parentheses after each topic. Now therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Commissioners shall meet in closed meeting for the purpose of consultation with legal counsel pertaining to actual or probable litigation, where such consultation or briefing in open meeting would adversely affect the negotiating or litigating posture of the public body, the Commons of Portsmouth Center 7.
We have a second.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Hines.
All right. Mr. Hines.
Yes.
Ms. Jiggets.
Yes.
Ms. Revel.
Yes.
Mr. Scott.
Yes.
And Mr. Thomason.
Yes, so we are in closed session.
Information Information Act certification required by Section 2.2-3712.d of the 1950 Code of Virginia as amended, whereas the authority has convened a closed meeting on this date pursuant to an affirmative recorded vote and in accordance with the provisions of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act. Now therefore be it hereby resolved that the minutes shall reflect that each commissioner, unless his prior contrary statement is in the minutes of this meeting, hereby certifies that to the best of his knowledge, I, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements under this chapter, and 2, only such public business matters as were identified in the motion by which the closed meeting was convened were heard, discussed, or considered in the closed meeting by the commissioners adopted this 18th day of July 2017.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Mr. Moore?
Mr. Hines?
Yes.
Ms. Jiggets?
Yes.
Ms. Revel?
Yes.
Mr. Scott?
Yes.
And Mr. Thompson.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, so having completed our agenda and having no other business, I will now adjourn the meeting.